Hello, and welcome to the North Coast Journal Preview, where we take a look at the stories being followed in the upcoming edition of the North Coast Journal. I'm your host, Dave Frank, and I'm joined today by North Coast Journal's Arts and Features editor, Jennifer Fromico Cahill, and special guest, Eureka's Poet Laureate, Dave Holper. Welcome, guys.
Hello.
Hey.
Well, thanks for joining us today, Dave. Why don't we just dive right in, Jennifer, and you could tell us a little bit about what's going to be on the cover in this week's North Coast Journal.
Okay, so it is the week of the edition is the 24th, so it comes out on Christmas Eve. And so normally we do this a little earlier in the year. We do it around Thanksgiving, but this year the annual Flash Fiction Contest falls upon Christmas. Merry Christmas, everyone. Here's your present from the Journal. So what it is a collection of stories that readers submitted of 99 words or less. If you're not a person who regularly counts your words like some sort of freak, like we do in the newspaper business all the time, it's kind of hard to fathom, like, okay, what is 99 words? And essentially, if it goes past covering your hand, being covered by your hand, it's probably too long, but you should count it anyway. We always get people who try to sneak in those extra one or two words, and it's always a shame to let them go. But 99 words is the only rule. It can have anything in it. It's the Journal, so you can swear. It can have any subject. It can be sort of a vignette, like a scene, evoking a feeling. It can be a narrative. We've had pretty much any topic you can think of. And this batch certainly brought us everything from, like, we always have a little murder, but we have time travel, we have animals, we have magic, we have a lot of the influence of COVID-19, which I'm sure David, our guest judge, can help us with talking about. But we have a number of judges. Dave is not alone. We also have Jen McFadden and Nancy Short, owners of the Booklegger. And these people read nonstop. So
very cool.
The fact that I was able to pull them away from whatever they're reading and read some, 200 different people's entries, multiple entries from all these people, I feel very grateful to have them. And also nice. Joanne Bauer, who is a retired children's librarian. She was the children's librarian for the Humboldt County Library. And she, too, just reading all the time, honestly, which is kind of wonderful. So we got these dedicated readers together, and the Poet Laureate of Eureka, who Dave is also a professor, an English professor at College of the Redwoods. So the reading is nonstop. So Dave, why did you let me drag you into this?
I don't remember how it is that you've been doing this, but I was intrigued by it, and I've done some flash fiction before. I'd written some, and I was just curious as to what sort of things would be submitted. So I think it was mostly my curiosity that got me involved. And it's always interesting to open up the file and see what's in there, because you're reading them all blind. You don't know whose it is. Mm-hmm. So it's just kind of a process of discovery, of finding those little gems in the submissions.
So I have a quick question. Is the flash part, is that the fact that it's so brief, that it's just 99 words and you're going to get this impression and then it's going to end real quickly? That's the flash? Yeah,
flash fiction typically keeps it somewhere under, I've heard of, things being called flash fiction that go up to about 500 words or so. But typically it's as short as you can make it. There are, journals that just do 100-word fiction and things like that. But this is all 99 words. And some people only use like 87. Like it's a flex. So it's been really fun. And one of the things that I enjoy most about it is actually getting together with the other judges and hearing what they think about the batch. But this year we had to do it via Zoom. Yeah. No treats at Ramon's and gabbing and gossiping, sadly.
But it worked out well for you, though, to do it this way, to improvise?
It did. So, David, I know we talked about this a little bit, but what were some of your favorites out of the bunch?
Well, there were definitely some ones about social distancing and about COVID. And there was one, I'm just looking for it. There's the one that you like so much, Jen, about the man and the woman who have the encounter on the street.
Yes, that turned out to be our winner.
Yeah.
Heather Quarles of Bayside sent in a story called A Perfect Stranger.
Right. I like that. And after we had talked, I went back and reread it, and I understand, what drew you to it, So I like that one a lot. Heather's a teacher for NPA in Arcata, so yeah.
So it didn't tip you off? You didn't recognize her style or anything?
I mean, later, after I saw that it was Heather's, I saw that I definitely recognized her style in it. So Heather and I have known each other for a number of years. She taught my daughter creative writing when my oldest daughter was at NPA. So, and she was just a student in my creative writing class, in my poetry class. So,
yeah, there are other people who popped up that, Neil Tarpey, frequent flyer in the flash fiction. He wrote a story called The Catfish Conversation, which I won't spoil for you, but it is a domestic drama that unfolds whilst frying catfish. And, he's somebody whose work I've read over and over, and I didn't recognize it. And when I looked at it with his name on it, I was like, oh, right. And
I felt that way with several. Like, for instance, I noticed Stephen Sotong, who writes science fiction. I hadn't thought of that as Stephen's, but then when I saw his name on it afterwards, I was like, oh, of course, that would be Stephen, who would submit that.
And we have plenty of new names in here. Some people who are, the first time in our little club. Josue Valdez of Arcata has a great little story called Morning Run. And I say a great little story, not in a dismissive way, because it's genuinely little. I think it might be only 95 words or something. Again, showing off.
Yeah.
And then, there's one that I picked that nobody, that I have my comments in, that we didn't know when we were looking at it, but it's a sort of mythic story with a kingfisher in it. Right. And it's got this sort of like forest witch in it. And it's this forest witch sort of helping a wounded kingfisher. And then when I looked up who wrote it, well, of course, it's Monty Merrick of Bird Alley X. So he's out here saving birds all the time. And when I called to confirm, his answering machine is like, if this is about an injured animal, call this other number. And I was like, well, of course I should have seen that this was somebody who worked with birds. But it's always a pleasure to read. There's always some stuff that's like, should I be concerned?
There are some strange ones that show up in there, and you don't quite know how to read them. But it's a tough act to do, to get a story into 99 words, or less. And there are a lot where you read them where they're coming along nicely, but it doesn't quite end right, or it just doesn't pull off entirely. So when you find the gems, it's really nice to locate them.
So, and it's something that looks easy, but I highly recommend when you're done reading all of these that you try it. Yeah.
So yeah, what I was going to say is I did have the opportunity to skim through a few of these, and they're clever, and like Dave said, some are gems. I was curious, what are some of the elements that people that made it really become a winner versus an almost ran, Dave?
Well, there's some that we were talking about this when we were meeting as judges, and one of the ones that I had liked was one that had a particularly unique twist at the end. So sometimes you'll find a twist at the end. Sometimes there's just an interesting tension that kind of peaks at the end. So there are, I guess, a variety of ways to do it well, but to pull it off, that's the harder thing. Let's see. What about you, Jen? What do you what do you recognize as the winners in the lot?
I guess it's for me, of course, I don't really need a surprise. A surprise can be nice, but the surprise can be a description. It can be, the description of in the Sorrowful Stallion, just a lovely before the sort of turn, the sort of poetic turn that happens in the piece. There's just a really nice, straightforward, clear description of a horse and a steer and the butcher's truck pulling up. There are other moments that have just a turn of phrase that feels so familiar and right. And those are great. I think one of the things that made the winner for me was that it is a very small drama. It's tempting to ask yourself, like, okay, I'm going to compress a whole novel or the fall of a civilization into 99 words for the challenge. But this really took a small, weird encounter. We have millions of encounters like this over the course of a life. You may never even tell anyone about it. It feels like nothing after it's over. But in the moment, you have these moments where you're like, do I know that person? Should I be afraid? Is this a funny moment? Should I be concerned? And, it could just be bumping into someone in a parking lot. It could be a weird interaction, online at the supermarket. It could be anything where you're not quite sure where you stand. And I think the identifying, locating, and really illuminating of a tiny moment like that can be just as good as describing something that's, a giant novel. It can be just as transporting and just as informing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Some of them are sustained by metaphor, I noticed. There's one that we liked that, let's see, it's about a father and a son, I think, in the hospital, and the father's dying. And it just has this sustaining metaphor of a river that binds the father to the son, and ultimately becomes the way that the son tells the father that it's okay to die, and also a tear rolling down the cheek of the son who's telling the story.
They can be surprisingly moving. I'm tempted to read our winner. What do you think? Should we do it?
I think you should. Yeah.
Okay. So this is Heather Quarles. Hey, Heather. I don't know her, but hey, Heather. A Perfect Stranger. The frost thawed in sunbeams as Julie walked the blacktop. The past 2 Fridays, a runner had cut through her path at 8:30, glancing a steamy gaze. She'd never seen him before, except the previous weeks, but felt a kinship at their shared routine. She blinked into her mask today as he ran through another lingering look. Hey, wait, aren't you Julie? He stepped closer. Did she know him? I know you from Zoom, right? He picked her out on a street while she was wearing a mask. His eyes danced. Julie stepped back. Can we stay distanced?
That's great.
I liked it partly for being, of our moment of, everyone masked and whatnot. And I think the need to stay distant is not new for women. And so this kind of captured that in a really ordinary, everyday way. And nothing bad happens, but if you're a woman walking around in the world, or now anyone walking around in the world during COVID, those interactions are now suspect and now full of danger. And I just thought she captured that really well and in a really soft way.
I thought it was really great. It was touching. And like you said, of the moment.
She had a poem she was working on this semester called Queen of Snakes, where she had gone out for a walk and she saw a snake and then wrote this poem, which became sort of a little bit of similar to this idea of the danger involved in men. And she said in a letter when the course was finishing that she had taken something that I told them at the start of the semester about how ideas are like fireflies. They flicker on and then they're gone. and that as soon as she got back from this walk, she wrote the poem down so she didn't lose it.
Easy to lose.
Easy to lose something like that because it's just this little evanescent moment that's there and then it's gone. So I'm glad she captured it.
Me too.
Yeah.
And on that note, I'm glad that North Coast Journal captured the insights and creative writing of all these people that participated. Thank you, Dave, for being a judge and for joining us here today to talk a little bit about the flash fiction article on the cover of this week's journal.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Jennifer, what else are you guys covering this week in the journal? What's going on the arts and features beat?
Well, elsewhere in the paper, I have a story about a new business, relatively new, starting in May, but, again, May 10 years ago. But starting in May, a gentleman named Jim Richards started a business called US Vets Deliver. And he himself is a US Navy veteran. And among his many different jobs in his life, including doing some electrical engineering kind of stuff and doing all kinds of different service work and being a slot tech for a while, he was laid off at the casino for when COVID picked up. And he thought to himself, you know what, I need an essential job. And he started with the idea that he was going to hire, different drivers, especially veterans, to deliver groceries. But that seemed to be taken over by Instacart and other services. And it was really hard to get into supermarkets. So instead, he started looking at local restaurants that were not being served by DoorDash. So DoorDash, Uber Eats, those services, they take a pretty big chunk on the restaurant end. So they can be anywhere from like 25 to 30% off the bill. A restaurant is already dealing with a really, really slim margin. And then you throw COVID into the mix. Now there's really no leftover money to play with, and it can be really hard. So he came up with a formula where the fee comes out of the customer end. And it's not a particularly big fee, but it's not coming from the restaurant end. There's no app. It's sort of as analog as you can be in this day and age, in the sense that you text US Vets Deliver and you say, hey, I'm looking to order from Seagrill tonight. Is somebody in the area? Once I tell you you're good to go, then you go and you order at Seagrill. If Seagrill's, you can either pay Seagrill over the phone with the tax and tip and everything, and then US Vets Deliver picks it up, brings it to you, and then you pay with one of those cool Square payment apps or payment add-on things. You pay the driver the fee for US Vets Deliver and a tip. And it's about 15% of your bill or a $10 minimum. So yes, if you want to get like, a milkshake from Stars or something like that, you're going to have to put $10 on that. But that's on you. You're making choices. But it's essentially a way to make sure that most of the private profit goes to the drivers, and also a way to make sure that the restaurants aren't getting, fees that make it prohibitive to do this kind of delivery service. So US Vets Deliver takes $2 off the top of that $10 fee, right? So, or the 15% fee. This is not a lot of money.
Right.
And when I talked to Richards, I was like, so how is this penciling out for you? And he was like, it doesn't. So far it doesn't. His hope is that with increased volume and more drivers, which he's got 5 right now, his hope is that with more volume, it will pencil out and he'll be able to just kind of manage it. Right now he has a dispatcher, but he's doing deliveries himself. And interestingly, he's still working for DoorDash.
Oh, wow.
Until he has enough orders through this service of his own, he's still doing that. And but his main reason to have the setup like this, to have the payment, is again for restaurants, but also because drivers. I don't know if you know anybody who drives for DoorDash, but if you're not careful, if you're not watching how much you're making per order, if you're just picking up a $5 order somewhere and you're only getting the fee and whatever tip, you could basically be working for less than minimum wage.
Totally.
depending on how long it takes you and what you're actually going to make off of it. And this way, drivers are not going to fall into that pit. And they don't do fast food, because it's not worth it. But it's an interesting shot at trying a new model for delivery service at a time when more people need it. And he's said that it's difficult actually for him to grow at the same time as, getting more drivers, to make sure you're not having people waiting if there's not enough drivers, or not leaving drivers waiting with no jobs. And his business does give preference to veterans for hiring, although right now he's the only veteran. The owner of the business is the only veteran. But driver turnover is a thing, and so it's going to be interesting to see how the business goes and whether it catches on.
Yeah, this is really great. I'm sending good mojo and wishing the best of luck to that enterprise, because it could be a win-win where, like you said, the restaurants are able to keep more money. Basically, the way we're living under COVID, so many more people are using those services. And also it gives people drivers an opportunity to work, hopefully. And in this case, keep more money, make more money. And in this case, we might end up with veterans. Some veterans might actually be able to think, this is something I can do, something I can make a little money this way and contribute. So best of luck to their enterprise.
And at this stage of the day, I'm just really happy to see people staying home. If you can stay home and not be out and about, I'm all for it.
Well, this was great, guys. Thank you, Dave, for joining us. Thank you, Jennifer. That's just about going to do it for us for this week. North Coast Journal is on newsstands now. Pick up a copy. Check them out online. Stay informed. Stay safe, everybody. Till next time, thanks. Look forward to seeing you guys again next week.
All right. See you next week.